Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I would say this brewery are known mainly for their Belgian styles of beer, although they've done a few more kind of interesting international things recently which have also been very good. So the one that we're going to have a look at today is a sub-style that I've not tried from this brewery before, but I have had the parent style from the brewery and that was pretty nice actually. So I have to say that this one has my curiosity piqued for a couple of reasons. So hopefully this is another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the northeast of Scotland. I'm never quite sure whether to say this brewery is from Stonehaven or Lawrencekirk, but regardless, we're going to have a look at another beer from 6 Degrees North. So this particular beer is called Green Listed. It comes in at 5% ABV and they're describing this one as a New Zealand Keller Pils. So yeah, as you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of New Zealand hops. Keller beers, I enjoy these as well. Lovely big kind of more yeasty lagers. And I haven't had too many that have been described specifically as a Keller Pilsner. But yeah, I think this should be quite interesting. But the last beer that I reviewed from 6 Degrees North was the Peloton Pilsner, which is available in quite a few of the supermarkets, and that was pretty solid actually. So I'm curious to see what a more kind of complex and crafty Pilsner, I guess we could say, from these guys is going to be like. And always nice to review some new beers from 6 Degrees North as well. I had quite a lot of contact with these guys back in the day when I was studying chemistry in Aberdeen. I used to go into their bar quite often. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. We'll kick on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from 6 Degrees North before, and we will no doubt add some more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regular at the moment because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland, and beyond that whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about 6 Degrees North. So 6 Degrees North, as I've kind of intimated already, are a Belgian style brewery with roots in Stonehaven, which is to the south of the city of Aberdeen in the northeast of Scotland. But the origins of this brewery go back to the Marine Hotel in Stonehaven Marina, but today they're brewing their beers in Lawrencekirk. So the owner of this company is Robert Lindsay, and he spent a lot of time in Belgium and fell in love with the Belgian beers and the Belgian culture, and so he decided when he came back to Scotland that he was going to brew his own. So the main construction of the brewery was undertaken in August of 2012, and the equipment was delivered over the next few months, and then the trial brews took place in January of 2013, and then commercial brews began in March of 2013. So they continued to do that. Robert, of course, has a background in as a hotelier and a restaurateur, if I remember rightly. And they actually opened their first pub in Aberdeen right next to Marischal College in May of 2013. And I think I was there the second day that it was open. And let's just say, my friend Grant and I, we had quite a heavy session in there without really realising it. We didn't really know the strength of Belgian beers at that time. But since then, they've opened up bars in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And all of the pubs stock a huge array of Belgian beers in bottle. And they've got a lot of tap beers as well, which is a mixture of their own other Scottish breweries. And you will get quite a few of the kind of famous Belgian beers on tap as well. But over the last few years, they've continued to grow their brewing capacity, develop new beers, and they also now have the Dynamo Mar in Dundee as well, which was partially funded with crowdfunding. And as of October 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 100 different kinds of beer. As I mentioned earlier, they do mainly Belgian styles of beer, but in recent times they've been doing quite a few German things as well, actually. You get quite a few wheat beers and lagers and things like that from these guys. So yeah, mainly Belgian and German kind of beers that you're getting from them. And I guess this is just due to who the different brewers and things are at the time. But yeah, some really, really solid beers from these guys. You know, the Four Saisons, the Wanderlust Wheat are probably two of the most kind of famous ones that come to mind, actually. So yeah, if you see some of the 6 Degrees North beers about, they are definitely worth checking out. And I will need to go up to Aberdeen and film a little out and about video for you at the original 6 Degrees North bar at some point soon. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can tell you about 6 Degrees North for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, check out those links. But let's get on and have a look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is a 440ml can. The artwork that we have on it is what you'd expect from 6 Degrees North these days. Plain silver top. I think I bought this one at the Beer Hive in Edinburgh, but I can't remember exactly. I might have picked this one up somewhere else. But you know, if ever I see a New Zealand Keller Pils, that's getting bought. I love my lager. I'm still in my lager phase, to be quite honest with you. And if it's a New Zealand hop lager, yeah, that is getting bought. I'm on that like a fly on shit, to be honest. But yeah, there you can see the 6 Degrees North brewery symbol there, which is pretty cool. Different from my glass, of course. I do still have my 6 Degrees North glass. But yeah, lovely artwork on it. And there you can see the green listed New Zealand Keller Pils. So yeah, it says on the side here, a classic Keller Pils, unfiltered yet clean and crisp, dry hop with Motueka to give a delicate floral edge. So as I said earlier, this one comes in at 5% ABV. Motueka, of course, is a New Zealand hop, as the name suggests and as the can tells you, but it comes in about 8% alpha acid, and in my experience it tends to be a lovely big kind of oily, limey sort of thing. And that's the thing with New Zealand hops. Quite a few of them are lower in terms of their alpha acid content. Alpha acid determines how bitter a beer is going to be, essentially, or how bitter a hop, the bittering power of a hop. Beta acids determine how long the bitterness is going to last, basically. But yeah, I do enjoy a little bit of Motueka. So the Pilsner, as we know, originated in the city of Pilsen in the Czech Republic, at that time the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And yeah, the original one, Pilsner Urquell. So yeah, Keller Pils, when it comes to Keller beers, these are ones that were made in cellars. Keller, of course, the German word for cellars, and they tend to be more kind of yeasty and bready. But this is a lager beer, so bottom fermenting yeast, cold temperature fermentation, in other words, between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius normally. So yeah, this I think should be quite interesting. I'm a big fan of my lager beers, and you know, as I said earlier, a New Zealand Keller Pils from 6 Degrees North, that's just getting bought. So yeah, I think I bought this one in the Beer Hive, but as I said, not 100% sure. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. And I've just opened it there, and you can smell the lime off of this already. We'll say that. You can smell the Motueka jumping out of this one. But yeah, this should be quite nice. Now, I wouldn't be surprised, because I've had this beer in the fridge a little bit. We'll sugar it up a wee bit just to make sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes a little bit of time for the haziness to come out in this one. So we just need to be careful with it. There you go. You can see the haze starting to come into it now. Now I think we'll leave the last little bit of it to put in just before we do the tasting, because I think you can see quite clearly the appearance of this beer. Now remember, I did sugar the head up a little bit, but this beer has poured. There's about 3/4 of the beer, maybe 80% in the glass at the moment, but that's poured with a finger and a half of a frothy, I would say, perfect white head. Let me just bring that in so the camera can show you. There you are. Lovely stuff. You can see a lovely frothy white head, a bit bumpy towards the top, but it looks great. 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and you can see it's got that lovely, very bright golden yellow colour about it, and you can see that sort of natural haze that you would expect of a Keller beer. Like I said, more Keller beers tend to be a little bit more kind of yeasty and things like this, so they're often unfiltered. So yeah, it looks absolutely great. But yeah, not too much carbonation visible in this one. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That determines the magnitude of your colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. And then any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts that you put in will affect it too. But when it comes to things like Pilsners and Keller Pilsners and stuff, you don't really have to care about that, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, certainly a very good looking beer, and pretty much what you would expect from the style and the sub-style, I guess we can say as well. So yeah, nothing too surprising about the appearance. Let's have a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go. Yeah, smells pretty good. I'm going to say straight away, it doesn't come across as the most authentic Keller Pils from the aroma. Now, as I've said in previous reviews, I tend to rate these on authenticity, like closeness to the ones that you would get from Germany, the Czech Republic, or whatever. Now remember, for me, the main difference between a German lager and a Czech lager tends to be the sort of yeastiness. The German ones, in my experience, always tend to be a little bit more kind of bready and crisp, whereas the Czech ones are a bit more kind of almost yeasty, bready and creamy, if that makes sense. They're just a bit thicker and smoother. Now this one just smells very, very clean, but it almost has a little touch of a kind of Belgian yeasty character to it and things. So yeah, it doesn't quite smell as authentic. Just on first impression, it doesn't smell quite as authentic as some of the ones you're going to have. But remember, you've also got New Zealand hops in there, and it's not unheard of to use New Zealand hops in German or Czech brewing, but quite often these beers are brewed with, you know, the German Hallertaus or Tettnangers, or the Czech Sats or some Jatas, whatever. So yeah, this one, we have to remember that in there, it does have a New World hop in it, so that's another thing that's going to affect it. But the first impression of this beer is, as I say, quite soft and bready. At the same time, it's got a little bit of a kind of cleanliness and crispness to it. You can kind of smell the Scottish water in it almost, but you've got this big, oily, fruity character in there that's almost a little bit out of place if you're wanting originality, but it does come across quite nicely, and I do have confidence that this is going to be a good beer, so don't get me wrong on that. But as I say, in terms of the authenticity to the style, it's not that. But then this is a bit of a silly thing to say in a way, because it tells you quite clearly on the can, a New Zealand hopped Keller Pils, so that's it. So maybe what we've said there is a bit pointless, but who cares. But yeah, let's break down the aroma for you a little bit more and just see how we go. So, backbone of the beer. It's got a nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing to it, absolutely. A lot of white bread to this one, definitely a lot of kind of fresh, fluffy white bread in there. It almost has a little bit of a kind of dusty, floury sort of thing to it, which I very much like. So yeah, that goes together really well in a sense. I really like how that comes out of this one. You do get a little bit of that. You do get a little bit of that kind of yeasty character. It's almost, in a way, it's actually almost similar to what you get in New England IPAs from the dry oats. You do get a little bit of that in this one. I'm just wondering, does it have? No, it's just malted barley. So yeah, that must be coming from the yeast then in this one. They must have used a kind of original yeast or whatever. But you can smell a little bit of dryness and floury character and almost oatiness coming out of the bread in this. But the bread, the white bread, is nice and big and thick, and at the same time it's just got a wee bit of dryness to it, which I very much like. So yeah, the aroma to this one is very, very nice. Yeah, it goes together really, really well in that sense. But yeah, the malty character of this one, I think, is pretty much spot on. But like I said, because it's a Scottish beer, and I say this about the Scandinavian ones as well, you can smell the cleanliness of the water. It just feels, you'll feel it in the flavour as well. But being Scottish, we're very proud of our tap water here, which is quite a funny thing. But you know, you can just smell the cleanliness of the beer, and the German examples and the Czech examples you get just would be a little bit smoother, but you can just almost feel a little bit of a crisp quality from this one due to the water. But I mean, there's a teeny little hint of like a very slightly biscuity sweetness out of this, but that takes a back seat to the bready and yeasty characteristics, of course. Usually these Keller beers are quite straight shooting on their malty characters, and this one demonstrates that quite nicely. There's maybe a little touch of woodiness underneath, but I think the malty side of it is quite nice. So yeah, gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. But on the But on the hoppy side of things then, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. There's quite a lot of floral character to this. Now remember, when it comes to your hop additions, early addition hops are the ones that are going to give you bitterness. The late addition hops are the ones that are going to give you the flavour and an aroma for the beer. And any dry hops that you do, those are pretty much totally flavour and aroma. So yeah, I suspect that what's going on with this one is that there might be a noble hop in this. There might be one of the kind of more noble type hops in this for the early editions, and then the late editions I think will be the Motueka, unless it's completely Motueka, which wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility because the green components of this are pretty big and bright. So yeah, you get a little bit of earthiness. There's quite a big bright floral aromaticity to this one, but at the same time it's got a little bit of that wetness to it, but you've also got a nice kind of zesty grassiness in there as well. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is pretty much all lime. It's a big oily and quite zesty lime character that you get out of this one, and for me, having Motueka on its own is quite interesting because I don't remember Motueka being quite as zesty as that. Motueka and Mosaic was always a very popular thing, and the sort of more orangey leaning hops was always a good combination, and then Citra and Motueka was always a good one as well. So yeah, you can smell like a really oily and juicy but quite zesty lime in this. I'm just trying to think if there's any more fruity character to it, but to be honest, I don't think so. Maybe just a light hint of apricot or gooseberry or something like that underneath there. So yeah, maybe a little bit of gooseberry and a wee bit of apricot, but yeah, definitely a big oily zesty limey character. But that is what you would expect of Motueka hops. But yeah, let's put the rest of it in the glass then and see how we get on. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. There's no sediment in the bottom of the can, incidentally, but I think it's about time that we taste this one. So yeah, this one is the green listed, a New Zealand Keller Pils from 6 Degrees North Brewing in Lawrencekirk, finding their roots in Stonehaven in the northeast of Scotland. Let's get stuck into this one and see how we go. 5% New Zealand Keller Pils. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh, that's pretty zesty. That's interesting, that. Now, I'll say straight away, this is a nice beer, but it's not what I expected. It really isn't what I expected. It is actually quite similar to the more, it's kind of the more, I suppose maybe it's just because of the yeastiness, right enough, but it's actually got a wee bit of that kind of Belgian saison-y type zip to it, which is interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. But yeah, once you take another sip of this, because this beer actually does have quite an impact to it, but once your palate's adjusted to it and you're getting the aftertaste and things, I think it comes across pretty nicely, to be honest with you. So, where do we start with this then? Yeah. This is pretty solid, actually. In terms of the in terms of the beer overall, like I say, it's got quite a zesty zip and impact to it, which is interesting. The malty backbone and the yeasty backbone of this one is quite interesting. It's got a bit of dryness to it, but it sort of thickens up as well. And you've also got quite a big green component to this beer. So this is quite interesting. In terms of originality, this beer isn't really that. It is more of a kind of, this is definitely more of a sort of craft take on an original style. I think the big hoppiness and the zip, the zesty zip that this beer has is quite something. So the malty and yeasty side of the beer, I think, is quite authentic in a way. But yeah, the hops are the things that really turn it into a more sort of American style craft beer, if that makes sense. But I like it. I do like this one. So yeah, let's see where we can go with this. Let's break the flavour down for you a wee bit more. Get a wee bit of gas off it, of course. So, on the malty yeasty side of things then. So backbone of this beer, you get a sort of Jacob's cream crackery sort of thing in the middle and the back third of your palate. That's the baseline of the beer. On top of that, you can feel a white bready character there, and it's actually quite a crisp white bread. I think there will be a good bit of Pilsner malt in this. You can really feel the crispness from the Pilsner malt in this. So you've got that soft white bready layer, and then you can feel that crispness of the Pilsner malt just sitting on top of that, particularly towards the back of the middle third of your palate. So let's focus on that middle third of your palate just now. So here, you've got one or two little woody notes underneath at the front of it. Jacob's cream cracker, soft white bread, and a little bit of a kind of Pilsnery sort of thing. On top of that, you get the kind of softer white bread in there. Then in the very dead centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of sweet, you do have a little touch of a sweet biscuity note coming out of this one. So this beer is 5%. It's not the most boozy of kind of Pilsner beers that you're going to come across actually, but you know, if you think Pilsner Urquell, that's either 4.4 or 4.2. I want to say 4.2. This one does have a wee bit more kind of booziness to it than that. So yeah, I do find there is a wee touch of a McVitie's digestive sort of sweetness there. You can feel it in the dead centre of your palate, and as you move further out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate, there is a wee bit more of a kind of biscuity sort of thing to it, which I like. So yeah, the malty side of this beer, I have to say it does mellow out, smoothen out and sweeten up a little bit the further that you go into it as well. So yeah, the character that you get out of this, I think, is pretty nice. It all goes together really, really well. So I don't think there's much else we really need to say about that middle third of your palate, but you can feel that towards the back of the middle third, the Pilsner, the sort of dryness of the Pilsner malt. As I've said to you before, Pilsner malt's a bit annoying to describe to you sometimes because it just gives you that sort of dry, crisp vibe. You get a lot of that towards the back of the. You get a lot of that towards the back of that front third of your palate. So I like that. I do like that. Yeah, in the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a wee bit of a bready build up, another bit of a bread crusty kind of thing, and then in the back third of your palate, bread crust underneath. To say, you get a bit of the crackery sort of thing as well. You can feel that, but I do feel this beer is a bit more kind of bread crusty, leaning towards the back of your palate. You can feel the white bready notes in there. It dries out. It gives you a little bit of airiness as well. Then on top of that, you have a sort of nice. You do have a little bit of a nice kind of. So say you can feel there is a little bit more of a. How would you say? You can feel there is a little bit of that more. It's almost got a little bit of a slightly wheaty like bitiness out of, which is interesting. You do get a little bit more bitiness out of the bread. Then on top of all of that, you get the more kind of yeasty layer. So you get that dry but soft, yeasty white bready sort of thing there, and that sits on top of everything on that back third of your palate. So you can feel that in the back third of your palate, the flavour's taller. As I always say, the flavour is taller in the back third of your palate. As you come further forward, it just condenses down a wee bit. Then as you go into that middle third of your tongue, it just squashes together and condenses a wee bit more. So the malty and yeasty side of things is pretty authentic in this one, I would say that. And I do find it's a wee bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste as well, but I like it. On the hoppy side of things then, and this is where the beer starts to differ and become a more sort of American style craft beer, if that makes sense. But in the back corners of the palate, you've got a wee bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal. Then as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's definitely a little bit more sort of floral, and it's definitely a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. So I do like how that goes together. It does have quite a bit of brightness to it and quite a bit of zippiness, but it's also a little bit wet in a sense too. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy. It's got a wee bit of zestiness to it, but you do get a wee bit of a kind of wetness to that zesty character as well. So yeah, I think that that works really well in this one for me. So green component is quite nice. But let's focus on the fruity side of the beer then, in the front third of your palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel it's a wee bit kind of drier and stuff. Then the base of that front third of your palate was in the base of that front third of your palate, you do feel a little bit of a softer white bready sort of thing, and you get a wee bit of dryness in there too. So yeah, I like how that goes together as well. But on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just kind of roll the way out of the beer. And this one, I think it is pretty much lime all the way. It's got this really almost sharp, zesty, limey character to it. There's maybe a wee tiny touch of apricot and maybe a little bit of a more oily gooseberry note to it, but it's lime all the way. You can feel that big, big, oily, zesty lime, and it gets particularly zesty as you come towards the front of your... it gets particularly zesty as you come towards the very front tip of your tongue, so yeah. That is quite interesting with this one. So yeah, big zestiness coming out of this beer, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me in that regard. And yeah, you get a little bit, you can feel a sort of lemongrassy thing just behind the very front tip of your tongue. The lemon and lime and stuff like this just really blends in with a kind of big zesty grassiness on the front tip of your palate. But yeah, flavour wise, this beer is quite interesting. So malty, yeasty side of things is pretty authentic, but the hoppy side of the beer is, you know, definitely New World American style craft beer, whatever. And I like that about this. It's something quite different. So the beer, in a sense, it's different from what I expected. It's certainly more kind of zippy and zesty and things like that. But on the malty, yeasty side of things, it does stick to that authenticity. So yeah, thumbs up to 6 Degrees North for doing something just a wee bit different. So yeah, on the... as we say, let's go on and round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So I would say this beer, for me, it's quite, I'd say that it's kind of top end or light bodied. Carbonation does have a degree of crispness to it, but I find this beer actually to be kind of slick at the same time, and it does develop a wee bit of dryness later on. I would say that. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this is a fairly standard, 25-30 IBU beer. Malty side of things and yeasty side of things is kind of smooth. Like I said, it gets a wee bit dry. There's a touch of sweetness in there. But yeah, I'd say overall it does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste. Fruity side of the beer is quite zesty and really quite citrusy leaning. But, for what it says on the can, it says it's going to be a New Zealand hopped Keller Pils. It does that. It really does that. So yeah, it kind of straddles the line, if you like, between authenticity on the malty side and the more kind of New World thing on the hoppy side of things. So it gets a thumbs up from me. I like what they've done with this one. So big thumbs up to 6 Degrees North here. And it sort of, in a way, it also kind of reflects that sort of Belgian vibe that this brewery embodies. So yeah, it's good. It definitely is good. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This one was the green listed, which makes sense when you think about it. This beer does really have a big kind of green zestiness to it. So it's the green listed, a New Zealand Keller Pils at 5% ABV from 6 Degrees North in Lawrencekirk and Stonehaven here in Scotland. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from 6 Degrees North. And as I said earlier, we will return to these guys at some point soon. But thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.